Hey guys, welcome back. Unpopular opinions in Pokemon number 7, I think. Check the title. Done quite a few of these. Gonna keep going. Azul, starting us off here with a post that says Skyridge Gyarados looks like an emaciated, cross-eyed blue rubber chicken with Michael Bay effects and is one of the worst depictions of the Pokemon, salvaged only because of legitimately good artistic detail and color. So this is coming from a Gyarados fan. I don't personally have anything against the Skyridge Gyarados. I think it's certainly different, but I don't know. This has got to be like a Dragon Rage, or I guess Dragon's Vengeance maybe, or Flame Vapor. But yeah, we now know. I don't think I've ever seen anyone hate on this card actually. So you might be the first, Azul. I'll take that into consideration only because of the fact that you like Gyarados so much. Muck says very nice, very niche thing to have an opinion about, and I'm not even sure it's unpopular. Imakuni's PC is so much cooler than Bill's PC. I would agree, just because this card is so much different going on, where it's kind of got the I don't know, like the Yoshi story kind of drawn in effect on it. I don't know. This has got that 90s CGI look if you're into that, but I don't know. Either just anything that's really different, I'm usually a fan of, so I'm gonna have to agree. Whether or not that's the popular opinion is a different story. Sacari, as always, gotta give him the shout out because he created this thread. Make sure you check him out, youtube.com/Sacari. And he says the Venn diagram of people who think there is a secret warehouse of sealed vintage boxes and people who hoard cases of modern boxes is a circle. So I would say there are definitely some sealed product hiding somewhere in an attic, in a storage unit, in whatever, that people just kind of forgot about. We've seen even a little bit of this popping up through this recent boom in Pokemon, where someone had a collection stashed away and maybe they pass away, and their kids or their grandchildren or whatever get their hands on it and are selling it off. So I mean, sealed vintage is always gonna, I mean, sealed anything is going to decrease with loss and people opening it. But I think the amount that's out there is very minimal in terms of vintage stuff compared to what people think. And then people who hoard modern, I think this is kind of the same case. People think that there's more people than there actually are that are stashing stuff away. A little bit different in the 2020-2021 era, but we've already seen those people starting to liquidate when the prices come back down to earth, where things are not increasing at a rate that's beyond belief. So and then over time, people are going to open that stuff up when they see that it doesn't jump up in value right away. So it'll all even out. Rip Guy Fox says, with each new generation, the Pokemon franchise is becoming less famous for its Pokemon and more famous for its waifus. If this trend continues, the most expensive modern cards will be female trainers. Well, maybe it'll just be female trainers with the Pokemon on all the cards. That would sell a set, I would say. All right, Madden 12UT says Pokemon will not get less popular over time, regardless of the quality of the games. Game Freak pushed out Sword and Shield so quickly and half-assed it too, and the community is so obsessed that they made constant excuses for them, and the game broke records for sales. It's actually a shame when you think about it. With such a loyal community, you'd think that Nintendo would make an attempt to push out quality titles instead of rush games. Yes, they're relatively fun, but it's Pokemon. A 4-year-old at the helm could make Pokemon still be extremely fun. The problem is that there's a seeming lack of effort that other A+ titles such as Breath of the Wild have. So yeah, I think Sword and Shield in terms of what it could have been was certainly a disappointment. There's never going to be a Pokemon game that isn't at least in the upper echelon of titles. There never has and there never will be. It's always going to be a good game, regardless of whether they put absolutely everything into it that they could have. Was it lackluster? Yes. Is it still in the top 10% of games? I would have to also say yes. Azul says, probably not an actual unpopular opinion, but I saw a post on Reddit that made me consider this. Retail stores, both in person and online, should place a limit on pre-orders and how much product a person can actually buy at one time. Pokemon should be for kids first and collectors investors second. So there is a lot of places that have done this, and it's seemingly too late now that the market has cooled off quite a bit. And now they just end up with a bunch of stuff stuck on their shelves because it's hard to implement this limit, especially on the retail level, like the big box store level. And it makes sense, largely because if there's a limit of 2 items per person, and you have single pack boosters, and then you have other items that are, an elite trainer box or something like that, they end up stuck with a lot of that, like single pack blisters and even the 3-pack blisters and some of the other theme decks and stuff like that. So I don't know. I don't think it's by the time they had it in place, I don't think it's necessary. I don't think it's going to be necessary after the celebrations stuff, but I could be wrong. It's very difficult to put this in place, and maybe doable on the LGS scale, but certainly not big box stores. They've done a pretty bad job of it. And then also even the Pokemon Center Online. So if you wanted one of each type of ETB, you can't order both products. So you have to make 2 separate orders. So it doesn't really prevent it. It just makes it worse logistically because they have to send 2 packages because they don't combine them for some reason. And then in Canada, there's also you're charged shipping. So I guess it's all right in the US for the customer, but it doesn't make sense for the Pokemon Center themselves. That website is an absolute disaster, and it's still crashing even though the popularity of things have died down. Certain items, just people really want to get their hands on them. Pikabutt 49620, a little bit of a typo there, an obvious troll, but we're going to read it anyway. They have 5 unpopular opinions. There needs to be a poop Pokemon. I would disagree. Although kids do love that poop emoji. Players should not be required to shower before going to tournaments. I don't think they are required. It is probably appreciated if they do. Base set needs a huge reprint. It's greedy how people hoard all the cards, yet I can't afford a common playset. That is a lie. Common playsets of unlimited anything. Well, I guess here is just base set. Unlimited base set would be extremely affordable. If you can't afford that, stop posting on here and get yourself some income for that common playset you're looking for. Tag teams need to be banned. It was a broken mechanic and it's bad for the TCG. Okay. Not really. I mean, it's no different than any of the other stuff. Just you're gonna have power creep, and then usually it kind of gets lopped off with the next era. Sword and Shield is the best gen of all time. Alright, that's a meme. I wouldn't say it's the best gen. It's still a good gen. And any generation is going to grow on people as time goes by. Swarm says, CGC is not a better grading service for grading a wider array of cards when they don't have sufficient authentication of those cards. Also, BGS already grades whatever you send in, which is honestly not good. Look at authentic altered cards. Oh yeah, there was something recently with Rudy that was a disaster with a magic card that was authentic altered, but it was actually a reback. I don't know if they just didn't catch the reback, so it was trying to be a beta, but they deemed it authentic altered somehow. PSA may have its faults, but requires sufficient documentation for authentication, which makes sense and is a good thing. I don't know. They all have their faults. I'm still personally believe that if you're going to keep the cards anyway, you're not looking to increase the value to resell them, then don't even bother with this stuff, especially at this point in time where the backlog is so long that your card will probably end up being worth less by the time it gets back to you. Enlightened Bulbasaur says people need to stop acting like gray stamps or some sort of premium variant of first edition base set unless you can manage to sell them to the one person in the world who's ever paid a premium for them. And in brackets, Gem and Pokemon. Sorry about sorry for getting thrown under the bus, Gem, but I'm sure he doesn't mind. It's literally just a bad ink job as a result of ink running low, similar to how some signatures on cards receive a low grade for auto. Gray stamp is not one set level of ink, but whole range of slightly less ink to a lot less ink. It's not really a true variant of the stamp, as thick and thin stamps are very defined variants. Yeah, I would kind of agree there. I'm not going to, at this point, get into collecting both the thick and thin stamps, but I would certainly do that if I somehow ran out of cards to collect, because my goal was attained of all the English cards, and even then I would probably get into like exclusive Japanese stuff before I would go into thick and thin stamps, and then gray would be way at the back. But as somebody that collects only like first edition base, or only collects base set or whatever, and you're looking for variants within that, or WotC even, I guess that's a place to go. What else does he say here? I personally would avoid gray stamp because they look exactly like what they are, cards that were poorly stamped. If anything, people should pay more attention to how the cards themselves can have variations in the color of the printing from lighter to darker. Yeah, you see a lot of this, and sometimes it's noticeable and it's kind of neat, but most of the time it's not to a big enough degree that that warrants a variant either. So Nate G says PSA 8s don't bother me, and I don't mind them in my collection. I also don't mind them because they're often overlooked, because people have the tendency to want like whole grades, either an 8 or a 9 or a 10. So those 8.5 sometimes go cheap, and you can crack them out and put them in your binder. McMimi says the modern EXGX and V concept is overdone, and Pokemon needs to move on to something new. Well, you're in luck, because there are V unions coming out, which are really weird and probably going to be pretty clunky. So if that's what you want, your wish is their command. Deleted member, Shadowless over first. I would disagree. I think the first edition stamp is very iconic. I think Shadowless is still neat that it exists, but it is leftover first edition that didn't get a stamp. D. Bruce says 90% of BGS 9.5s are a complete scam and are literally just PSA 9s. Be careful with that, or your father Gary might spank you. Kami no Ikari says, I sympathize with the Rocket Trio. Me too. They'll have their day. Maybe, eventually. Pokedreamer says, unpopular opinion, because I too love seeing my collection go stonkoids. I didn't think I'd ever say that word, but we're reading. Is that I know for a fact there are some people who came over from the crypto space with the sole intent of buying a product at record prices, holding and dumping it at the right time. I've been literally told this by some people who have been selling to the recent celebs that I'm sure you've recently heard of. So yes, prices have been going up in general, but the next wave, it going to get stupid. $1,000 Caterpies, anyone? So I mean, this should be pretty obvious to anyone that has been part of the market. Whenever there's this much hype behind something, there's going to be a ton of temporary interest. I mean, that's hobbies in general, and especially Pokemon. Like I've said a few times, most of the time when someone gets interested in Pokemon, they lose interest within a year. Anyone that makes it beyond that is probably in the 10% that continue on. I'm just making up numbers, but that's just from my experience, what I've seen. And whether or not they sell off everything, or they just come back to it later, or they just forget about it altogether, is a different story. But yeah, when there's money involved, like there has been, there's going to be a lot of people that are playing it as sort of a like a crypto market, buy, sell, whatever. And then also with people trying to get rid of cash and sink it into physical assets. With inflation currently, this is what you're going to end up getting. A lot of people that aren't really interested in the long term. So just hold tight. Everyone panicking about prices. everything's, not everything, but a lot of stuff is retraced already, and I can only assume that it will even more once the interest level gets back down to to planet Earth here. Pichu fan says, this is something I only realized yesterday, and I don't believe it's something which has been shared here yet. For that, I can only assume this will go down well. I prefer holofoil cards without swirls. I don't think I have any preference over like one or the other, but I can see the appeal in when like the swirl is in a certain location that like really pops off. What's he got at the bottom here? Hear me out though. I like hollow swirls. I think they're pretty, but the problem I have with them is that they draw your attention away from the rest of the artwork. If given the choice between a card with a swirl and a card without a swirl, I prefer the latter. Yeah. So part of that, I think people never really paid attention to the swirls earlier on, and then all of a sudden it became a thing. Sort of like hollow bleeds and stuff like that. Like it was always kind of there, but it's up to the individual if they want to pay more for something that has a swirl or not. Quichancy giving us a graph here. Direct correlation number of PSA 10 first edition WotC cards owned, and happiness over increased exposure and rich celebrities entering the hobby. We got the upwards trajectory here. I guess so. If you're going to liquidate these before this this kind of dies off. I don't know if this is an unpopular opinion, but it might upset some people. King Boo says, here's one. Japanese Gold Star look far worse than English. I don't think they look far worse. I think usually the opinion is the other way around, or the popular opinion is the other way around, so you definitely win on that front. I'd rather have the English ones just because I collect the English cards. And if I had unlimited time and budget, I would collect the Japanese ones as well. I think the only real argument here is whether or not you like yellow borders or not. And then also with the Espeon and Umbreon, the differences in release and the fact that they were hollow in Japanese. Muck says, I don't understand why PSA is so harsh when it comes to indents. I can only speak for myself, but I really don't see why a tiny indentation on the back should hurt an otherwise gem mint card by 4 whole grades. So typically if something has a dent in it, like a binder dent especially, or whatever, they'll drop it down to a 6 automatically, even if the rest of the card is flawless. Which, I mean, they'd almost have to have subgrades, and then that would affect the surface. And so the grading system is not perfect, and I guess at some point they decided that's what they would do, or that's general consensus of what they do, and seems to be the trend. Which brings me to my next point. There is too much focus on grades instead of actual condition. If you want to build a mint set, a great PSA 8 would be actually better than a questionable 9. Personally, I started to regret having passed on good lower grade cards in the past because I cared too much about the cert, and now the higher grades start to get out of reach for me. Yeah, so just like don't worry about the higher grades. At the point, anything over like an 8 and a 9, usually people can't tell the difference, including the people grading them. And the same goes like with the difference between a 9 and a 10. You'll see it all the time with people getting cards back, and they'll be like, why is this a 9? Why is this a 10? And then they resubmit and it changes. So don't concern yourself too much with that by the condition. And even then, like, does it really matter if it's got like a couple little white specks or something on the back? Slap that baby in a binder, pay a fraction of the price, and enjoy it. Niche says, I think 99.99999% the weirdly textured, oddly outlined half 3D, half CG cards CPIC 1 are atrocious and are even worse than the bad CG 3D modeling from the early 2000s CPIC 2. I can't wait for this style of card to be out. I hate the textures, the colors, especially the hollow patterns. They look awful in photographs. Yes, this includes the SV49. I think that card looks like dog. So no, not for everyone, but you're in luck because things usually change over time. We don't have the image here anymore, but I think the variety in modern Pokemon cards is exceptional. With artists, with digital artists, with hand drawn artists. There's a mix, and there's something there for everyone. So just don't collect those ones, I guess. Which is going to be more of the expensive cards. So you're in luck. You're going to save some money by just picking out the artworks that you like on the non-hollows. 4-star TCG says, there has never been a bad main series Pokemon game. In fact, there has never been a mediocre or even just good main series game. They are all simply degrees of exceptional, and each game has multiple qualities, which makes it timeless. We have been spoiled with amazing games for so long that when one game is slightly less amazing than another, we call it bad. Yeah, to an extent. But you got to think that the Pokemon Company they can certainly do better than what they're showing. Whether or not that's in their best interest is debatable. Maybe they don't want to sink too much money into that development or time, whatever it is. But I think it's still important to be critical of any flaws that come out in games, even though they're going to be good games regardless. There's no Pokemon game that's not in the top percentage. I don't even know, like probably top 10% of games on whatever console it comes out on. Especially the handhelds before, like you can't really. There isn't much that gets to that level in terms of playability, the amount of time that you're going to spend on it. All right. Quellicant says, fighting type often makes for lazily designed Pokemon and doesn't mesh with the other types. Flying type is superfluous and similarly doesn't mesh, although it is less egregious than fighting type. Heracross should have been the version specific rare bug to stand alongside Scyther in place of Pinsir in Gen 1. The existence of 2 card versions of each fully evolved Gen 2 starter in Neo Genesis is annoying and unsatisfying, and one of each should have been chosen for inclusion instead. The fully evolved Gen 1 starters should weigh substantially more than 200 pounds each. Let's just consider Charizard an example of this. If Ash is roughly the average weight of a 10-year-old boy, which is about 70 pounds, then Charizard would be a lot more than 200 pounds, given the glaring size difference between the two. So I think maybe that even might have been a mistake to have their stats on the card and maybe trying to imitate sports or something like that, where they have weight and height and stuff like that. And then you're bound to have these inconsistencies with the anime and the cards and the just in general. So, and the game too, I guess. So it is what it is. And then also, as we've seen, sometimes their weight might change depending on the size of the actual Pokemon. And Pikachu, or all the Pikachus, might get skinnier over time. KMW says all English cards are foreign and objectively inferior to their Japanese counterparts. I mean, I guess I'd just rather have I guess technically they're foreign, especially if you're in Japanese, considering them foreign would if you're in Japan and play the Japanese game, they would be foreign. For everyone else that speaks the language, that's just a separate release that is in English. I don't know. I think this is along the lines of justifying your Japanese collection. You don't have to do that. If you like Japanese cards, you go to town. The belief that true collectors should never take into consideration the overall market or life-changing amounts of money is inherently classist. Yeah, so I think this is just a bad take overall, to think like that someone isn't a real collector because they're making decisions based on money, because you might want to optimize the amount of cards that you can get, or might want to buy something that you don't want to buy something that's playable and standard necessarily, because that's money better spent somewhere else where that card might decrease in value, even though you might really want that card. Sometimes you make that sacrifice and take the hit, sometimes you don't. It's all up to the individual. Deleted member again, post 0. I don't understand the whole buy what you like BS. I mean, can't you buy what you like and also buy something with a good price growth history and price stability. Plus, there's a lot of misleading people away from the investing, hustling, flipping mentality in Pokemon, which I don't understand as well. If you don't think money is important, why do you have a job? Don't judge me for my unpopular belief, please and thank you. So, this is a lot of like usually when people are new and they ask the question, what should I buy? Which is kind of like an ongoing meme. They're really asking, what should I buy that's going to make me a bunch of money? The reality is no one can predict the future. And that if you buy something that you like, you're more likely to hold on to it longer, which is probably your best shot. Than everything else involved. Hopefully at this point, if you're buying what you like, you've invested time into researching what that item is and what the potential for it is. So, I mean, it can be price related if you want. You do you. But if you're not interested in it and you're not in the market long term, then you're kind of wasting your time trying to make a quick buck, because you're probably going to get burned just as much as you make money on things. So buy what you like, because if the price goes down, whatever, you have cards that you like, you have product that you like that you're not like worried about getting rid of. Laladita says Charizard is crap. O'Doyle, I mean Blastoise rules. I see a little bit of bias here. Blastoise fan. Yeah, I would say Venusaur, Blastoise, Charizard in that order, in my personal opinion. Krill says Crystal Charizard is the most overrated and one of the worst crystal card artworks, second only to Crobat in my opinion, and that's including the Aquapolis ones as well. I don't know. I like Crystal Charizard and Crystal Crobat. It seems like this is a recurring theme that people really hate Crystal Charizard for some reason, which is weird. People either really like it or hate it, but I don't know. I like it. I'm not really a Charizard fanboy, but I think the crystals are nice. Nikhil says, not directly unpopular, but I have found for myself that I love the trainer artwork more than the individual Pokemon artwork based cards. I feel like the trainers just have a lot more room and there's a lot less of, well, it looks like this one kind of vibe. Lucky Stadium, New York, Pokemon Center, New York, Glass, Pokemon Breeder all come to mind, but that's just me. Yeah, I really like the trainers. I think even more than a lot of the Pokemon when there are Pokemon in the trainer card. And you'll see a lot of that. And then more Pokemon the better. We're seeing that a little bit with the alternate arts that are coming out pretty soon. Where there's all kinds of Pokemon. It's like a whole scene going on. So, I mean, a trainer card could kind of do that same thing. I think even energy cards could be extremely popular, as we've seen with the Heart Gold, Soul Silver ones, where they have Pokemon on them. Those are just silhouettes, but can you imagine if they had actual Pokemon on them? People would be slapping each other for them. Caught at Point says, as a literal Pokeball, Voltorb should have more icon points. So this kind of makes sense, but this also immediately made me think of any RPG that has treasure chests that are bait chests, and you gotta open the chest and then it has teeth and it tries to bite your hand off, and then you have to fight it. So I feel like it's one of those, which is kind of a lower class enemy in my opinion, other than maybe the treasure dude in Diablo 3. Cross says, she's never yours, it's just your turn. She being any card, seal, product, etc. No, I'm not okay. That's deep, Cross. I'm gonna need you to never mind. Step down. Mewtwo. I think that's Mewtwo. Mewtwo W. Maybe Mewtwo just spelled differently. Maybe that's the like German way or something. I'm not entirely sure if this will be considered unpopular or not, but I don't see why anyone other than for pure enjoyment would pump money into modern product versus vintage. People are aware that Pokemon is a huge hit now. As far as I know, nobody knew Pokemon would have this much success back in the late 90s. The pop numbers for modern are going to exponentially exceed that of vintage, especially in high grades. We weren't instantly sleeving our cards back in 1999. That seems to be par for the course these days. Seeing those GX VMAX cards in PSA 10 going for similar price to some first edition PSA 9 holos doesn't make any sense to me. So I've done a lot of modern recently, and focused more on modern stuff, or like stuff that's just fallen out of modern, what you would consider just fallen out of modern, that didn't really get bumped too hard by the recent market conditions. And that's largely to do with the fact that everything spiked so hard in the uh, older sets, especially the really vintage stuff, that I kind of made a prediction, and the fact that I thought there's no way that this is going to maintain itself, and I'll just wait for a retrace. Um, there's risk involved no matter what decision you take, but it seems like it's playing out pretty well in my favor to just kind of ignore that, put that on the back burner, enjoy some modern. I love everything from the vintage stuff to the modern stuff, so that was a good idea for me. At least it looks like it's playing out that way. Um, so, and then seeing like everyone talks about like, oh yeah, look how much is printed now compared to back then, and everyone's doing this and that and this. But at the same time, the pull rates on the older stuff were ridiculous. Base set unlimited, especially the print runs, were extremely large, as we've seen on pop reports and everything else. A lot of that product wasn't even open till later on, and was still extremely inexpensive. Everyone seems to forget that the pull rates on some of these newer cards, some of these secret rares and stuff like that, it's extremely difficult. Look how hard it is. Just take a look at some of the sets on Poke Collector or whatever, and just look at how hard it is to complete a master set now versus what it was back then. Like, even without taking the reverses into consideration, the sheer amount of secret rares and the amount of product that you would have to open, even if you somehow magically did it without getting duplicates, is an insane cost. So even though there's more now, I don't think there's that many more of these big cards. Sure, the bulk, the commons, the uncommons, even the rares to an extent, are going to be just a flood of them. Your bulk stuff is going to be extra bulky, but that higher end stuff is going to be crazy difficult to acquire from pulling from packs, which will in turn make it a little bit more rare than everyone seems to think it is. Shining Doraemon says, really wish they'd continue with the whole Ultra Beast thing. Really like that, especially the really cool designs. I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of the Ultra Beasts. I don't even know if I can think of a favorite. But I don't know. It was a cool thing. It was a little bit of a Sun and Moon gimmick, so we probably won't see it, at least not for a while. We will, I'm sure, see those Pokemon some more, but the likelihood of them adding more Ultra Beasts is probably pretty low. Way Too Slow Bro says, there's too much fixation on price. Just buy what you like and can afford. I agree. There's nothing wrong with being aware of prices and everything else. If you want to optimize the way that you're collecting or anything else, or maybe you have extra cards, and if they're hanging out and you want to sell them and you want to keep an eye on prices for that reason to get the most out of that extra stuff, probably to go back into your collection, then by all means do that. Sacari is back and says, Yellow Cheeks Pikachu should be more popular than Red Cheeks. Every Pikachu card after base set has Red Cheeks, and somehow collectors decided base set Red Cheeks was more unique than the only Pikachu card that has Yellow Cheeks. So this we covered this already, but the story was that it was intentionally yellow because he was charging or using his attack or whatever. And then at some point, probably WotC changed them to red. So the initial cards that came out would have had the red cheeks, and then they changed them back to yellow after finding out that that was the intent, that they were supposed to be yellow. So I think if the rarity of the yellow was greater, or the story was different somehow, that they were supposed to be red and they were accidentally yellow in the very beginning, and there was only a few, like there was a smaller percentage of yellow, then it would be the other way around. But interesting to think about. Sophie says, okay, here's a pretty unpopular one. Steve Siege would be decent if it wasn't overprinted. I would have to agree. Some of the secret rares actually look really good. Right. And everyone that likes shiny Pokemon, there's some shiny Pokemon in there that are extremely easy to get. I think even, I don't know if there's any in the common slot, but there are in the uncommon for sure. And the secret rares are beautiful. So, I mean, I think it's just kind of like a piled on, and people sick of it being in boxes, similar to people that were sick of evolutions. Then all of a sudden, evolutions turned into this crazy thing when all these new people got into the hobby. Everyone was seeking out evolutions. So, Professor Stevens says, I really wish we got more mini sets, 20 to 40 cards between main releases. Detective Pikachu was a fun distraction, and I love seeing the unique art taken from the movie. I'd almost rather see them put into the promo slots, so like the SWSH promos kind of thing, and then at least that way they have a home. But that might be a little bit personal preference, so that everything can go into the same binder without making some kind of weird division. Or I guess I could just put them at the back or front, wherever. Those the little sets are awkward in terms of binder sets. So I think that's the only reason that I'd rather them just be part of the whatever generation promo, Black Star promos. Effectspore says, CGC cases look better than PSA cases and do a better job at displaying the card. This is all personal preference. I know a lot of people don't like when something new comes out and they like, the CGC cases look stupid or whatever. Or then usually it's people arguing about the labels. Personally, I think displaying the card or anything else is better to just be in a ringless binder than in any PSA or CGC case. All right, Quachancy says, amount of money you have at stake versus hesitance to publicly state anything negative about the current Pokemon market. We're really trying to wrestle some jimmies here with the Chansey graphs, and yeah, I would say that's definitely the case. I've seen some of this going on. Cosrob says, it's a high risk time to buy graded Charizard with the amount of show bidding and pumps going on. I think just the market conditions themselves make it a high risk to buy a lot of this older stuff or expensive stuff. At least anything that had spiked up, and we're kind of seeing that now with the retraces, and I think there's just more of that to come. I could be wrong, but the same thing with like anything graded. The demand for graded cards right now is pretty dumb. I don't know how many posts, like just when I log into Facebook, it'll just be a wall of people asking like, hey guys, sell me some slabs. There's no indication what card they want or anything like that. They just want a graded card. And you see a lot of that with everyone sending to companies that normally no one would want to send to because it's not adding any value to the card itself. They just want to have it in a case. I guess normally it wouldn't add any value, but maybe it is right now with the current market conditions. I think everyone needs to be a little bit careful with that. Grading cards that are damaged and not very valuable, and you get into the area where you're paying more to grade a card than the card is worth, or at least than the card will be worth when it gets back to you. And I think there's going to be a huge fall off of all these startup grading companies that are obviously very temporary and just trying to cash in on the fact that the big guys can't meet the demand currently. Show bidding, I mean, that's just like always going to happen, and pumping. There's a lot of pumping going on because the market is nuts. Card Games 12345 says EX Team Rocket Returns looks better than the Team Rocket set. I would agree. I think this will probably make a lot of people mad. In general, newer cards, not always the case, but in general, as the game has progressed, the artwork has also progressed, and a lot of these artists are the same artists, and it's not really the artist that's to blame. It's more just the effort that was put into cards. Before it was just a Pokemon on a holofoil background, typically, or like a bare bones background. to now where we have these artworks that mesh together and it's the same scene, and it's got Pokemon by the same artist, and just way better. What are your... Oh, I guess I can also say the like the popularity of Team Rocket at the time was Pokemon was still on a high back then, and then like the Team Rocket Returns. Team Rocket Returns was in a low, so there isn't very much of it printed, and that's why you see like the seal product is extremely expensive. A lot of the cards as well. Celestial Dragon says, as the card values increase, my nostalgia decreases. It was fun collecting, but buying the card is nothing compared to opening the pack. Eventually I will sell all of my collection except for the base set Holy Grails until the prices can buy me a nice house. So I think the more time you spend in the hobby, the more that nostalgia, like your original nostalgia after you come back in, kind of decreases on those original cards. And that's why it didn't take me too long before I wanted to get everything that I'd missed out on as well, and all the new stuff that's coming out, because there's a lot of enjoyment in that, as well as just coming back and looking at the cards that you had as a kid. If you truly enjoy the cards, then I think that might be a good option for you. If you're just trying to go back and get a kick from the original stuff that you had, or just a base set or whatever, then by all means do that. And when you've had enough of it, feel free to either stash it away or sell it or whatever you have to do. As long as you got your enjoyment out of it, that's the most important part. Nimmons says, this may have already been stated earlier in the thread, but I wish sets were still organized with the hollows at the beginning of a set instead of by type. It makes binders look nicer too, in my opinion. Yeah, I kind of wish this was the case. It's really hard. It's really hard to organize the newer sets, especially like the ones that are getting too big for the binder, because your regular cards and your hollows and stuff like that will have reverse hollows. So if you put them side by side, then they're going to end up being staggered, because all of a sudden you'll have a V that doesn't have a V max to go beside it, and then it throws everything off. So in terms of, I kind of wish that it was like all the V's maybe. I don't know how they could do it, but something like that would be, I think, preferential. I like the hollows at the front, or the big hits at the front, and then maybe like the secret stuff at the back. Kind of gives you a better flip through too as well, I think. But they're gonna do what they do. Thanks for tuning in, guys. That's the last one for the day. Please let me know if you have any unpopular opinions. Every now and then I'll make sure to add those comments into one of these videos, so they are appreciated. See ya.